In 1991, the music scene was dreary and seemed to be driven along by its own inertia. 80s hair metal still held sway, a shallow aesthetic of posturing self-image and fast times, epitomized by technically proficient, frenetic, but ultimately pointless guitar solos, and keyboard players who would hold down a chord on one synthesizer, while stretching across to play notes on another synthesizer. It was a year when big stadium acts from the 80s were releasing underwhelming albums: Queen, Bruce Springsteen, Dire Straits. For a year or so, there was a half-hearted notion that a genre of ecstasy-driven synth-pop might plausibly be cool, with Jesus Jones releasing songs like International Bright Young Thing and EMF getting crowds dancing to Unbelievable. The music scene languished in relation to broader tensions in society. The greed is good mentality of the materialist 80s, exposed by the financial spasm of the Wall Street crash of 1987, was further exposed by the nasty recession of the early 90s. This wider disillusionment and uncertainty formed a backdrop for a more abstract wanness and lack of expectation about popular culture. Often, verbs can be particularly clinching. You experience childhood. You enter adulthood. You approach old age. But you hit puberty, and I couldn't think of a greater soundtrack to coincide with that particular collision than Nirvana's 1991 release, Nevermind. Clusters of teens would hook up at friends' houses to listen to the album, have it blasting from cassette decks in cars, and hunch forward with cheap guitars, learning the songs, until their soft middle-class suburban fingertips were so thickened with calluses they had lost all sensation. From the first second, Nevermind was the center of gravity, the new absolute contrasts between clean verses and loud, distorted choruses. The new idea of brilliant melodies delivered in a screaming, excoriating voice. The new idea of lyrics that was somehow both angsty and blithely detached. The new idea of punkish vocals full of surrealist imagery. Smells Like Teen Spirit featured a new dynamic range for an alternative track, where the vocal, at one point in the chorus, hurtles up just short of an entire octave. It was everything you liked about pop, and everything you liked about raw indie music, divested of the thin, manufactured aspects of the former, and the shrill, lo-fi sloppiness of the latter, a combination it was hard to believe had occurred. Nevermind caused convulsions in the music industry. In the space of a few months, Nirvana had gone from obscure underground band to knocking Michael Jackson off the top of the US Billboard charts. 80s hair metal bands were now painfully uncool and being summarily dropped by their record labels. For a year, probably less, alternative music meant something, and you couldn't help from wanting to be swept up in the grimy, slovenly, visceral glee of it. By his own admission, Kurt Cobain wasn't a particularly great guitarist technically, but his stabbing, scuffing, and aggressive playing was perfect for the moment. The antithesis of the era's self-indulgent solos designed to dazzle with their speed and dynamics. The key with Kurt Cobain was that he was an extraordinary melodist. Nirvana's songs are deliberately simple. The guitar playing is often limited to power chords, which involves playing just the top 3 strings, and the sound is drenched in distortion and feedback. But an eager 15-year-old, working out the chords, will be struck with an excited incredulity as they sing or hum the melody over the top. Just as with Bob Dylan, where the allure of the lyrics has driven countless teens to sit down with a notebook, hoping to emulate the imagery and themes, only for them to give up 10 minutes later with nothing produced beyond an abstract doodle in the margins. Working out the chord pattern for the Nirvana song Lithium leaves you with a tantalizing sense that you could come up with something similar. Drain You is another great example. Its verse is 4 simple chords, but the melody is surprisingly elaborate. Punk music, a decade before, had produced some classic songs, mainly from The Clash, but the genre had been more about spirit and attitude than musicianship. Cobain was a huge fan of the Beatles and had already developed a pop sensibility with the song About a Girl from the band's previous album. The harmonies on Nevermind, another thing rarely found in prior hard alternative music, are clever and tight. On a Plane, Drain You, In Bloom all have fantastically layered voices. Dave Grohl recently admitted that he borrowed some of his characteristic beats and fills from prominent 70s disco drummers. His value was perhaps best summed up with a particular accolade. Smells Like Teen Spirit joins Ringo Starr's Come Together and Phil Collins' In the Air Tonight as one of those rare songs that can be recognized by their drum beat alone. This alchemy of punk attitude, a grab bag of disparate musical influences, great lyrics, angst, minimal instruments, and a rare aptitude for melody produced success on a scale no one could have conceived of, least of all the band, who dubbed the succeeding year of touring as the Year of Insanity. Being grown up today means hearing about a new performer whose song is pushing the boundaries of melody and production, is revolutionizing the music scene, is causing a groundswell of excitement in the culture, and is changing the game, only to listen to it, and it's a song about how summer is fun. It has literally been 30 years since young people experienced a sudden eruption in the music scene, a new genre that seems to both shape and reflect a young generation's mood, tensions, and mindset, and expands to encompass its own look in dress sense, hair length, and accessories. Grunge, like psychedelia, glam, and punk before it, was a youth culture narrative as well as a style of music. Another poignant thing about looking back on Nevermind after so many years is that grunge was probably the last there will ever be of those cool musical and cultural narratives. There are several reasons for this. Firstly, in the pre-internet age, it was possible for bands and musical scenes to develop and thrive before they caught on. David Bowie had bombed with 3 previous albums by the time he seemed to suddenly appear with Ziggy Stardust. With home studios and downloadable music programs, musicians can produce albums and release them online by themselves, without needing, or especially caring, to hone their skills in front of audiences or to be part of a scene. Secondly, there is no longer a largely white, monolithic youth culture. With Western society now so diverse, beset by tensions over identity politics, and so atomized by technology, there is no longer the same singular concept of the youth to be drawn en masse by a new act or genre. Lastly, the modern age of music is characterized by the triumph of theme over substance. Empowerment, diversity, and inclusivity have become such a focus that their expression in music has led to the prizing of such themes over the music itself. Body positivity and the struggle against misogynistic societal expectations around women are incredibly important and vital themes. But Lizzo, cavorting around the stage in spandex, playing the flute, is not good substance in terms of musicianship, melody, or production. LGBT progressive ideals, the acceptance and embrace of sexual identity, all seen through the lens of racial stereotypes and related conflicts, are powerful themes, but Lil Nas sliding 100 miles down a stripper pole into hell to give Satan a lap dance is not good substance musically. WAP has an undeniably great and empowering theme, but the music itself is tuneless trash. Since theme is extolled so much over substance in the modern age, youth have become accustomed to this conflation, that if the themes are good, then the substance, the music, is by connection good as well. This prevailing mindset is a key reason why music today feels as insipid and centerless as it was in the years before Nevermind. Nirvana didn't discuss social issues or themes. The medium, the music, was the message.